The blowback, though, from Republican senators over the Boxer-Kerry climate legislation began well before yesterday's rollout. Their general concern, as you know, involves the potential cost of the cap-and-trade plan, both to consumers and to the business sector. But now that GOP lawmakers have actually seen the draft bill we're dealing with here, they have some more specific complaints about what is and what is not included. Joining us now is Clean Skies Dan Goldstein, who has been tracking the Republican response. And Dan, we're hearing about what we expected from GOP members, right?
Yeah, that's right. And essentially what they're looking at, obviously, is, as they put it, it's not just cost, but it's an energy tax to them. And as Mitch McConnell, Senate Minority Leader, said yesterday, in their point of view, it's going to be a tax every time an American fills up their gas tank or flips on a light switch. Now, you can recall the EPA did say that by about 2050, this would cost the average American family about $1,100 a year. But in the interim, they're saying that this would be maybe a postage stamp a day, and that was the words of Lisa Jackson. However, we did hear earlier with the Treasury Department saying that this bill, if it was 100% auction, would be about $300 billion, and that's the number that Republicans obviously want to focus on, because as the way they see it, as the number of auctions go up, and as in the Kerry-Boxer bill, the auction amount of the allowances is now 25% versus the Waxman-Markey, which is 15%. The more that it's auctioned off, the higher the cost goes. And you recall that House Minority Leader John Boehner, during the Waxman-Markey debate, said if this was the case, it would be about a $3,300 cost to the American family, and that's what really the Republicans are focusing on. Here's Senator James Inhofe, who's the ranking member on the House EPW committee, saying basically this could be one of the biggest tax hits in American history.
This is the same in terms of the cost. This has to be more than the Waxman-Markey bill because the targets are different. They're 20% targets at 2020 instead of 17% targets. So if the Waxman-Markey bill and all analyses average out about $350 billion a year, this would be something more than that. I don't think there are too many people who want to go back, particularly some of the newly elected Democrats, go back home and say, aren't you proud of me? I voted for the largest tax increase in American history.
Now, also the GOP, too, is worried about the allocation of those allowances and just how they're going to be split up. James Inhofe refers to them as the permission slips, quote, to pollute. And like Waxman-Markey, they're concerned that the Kerry-Boxer bill is very vague on how those allocations are split up, and they think that's basically a tactic to get the bill out of committee, that it's a sort of a divide and conquer strategy to help split up the industries that might be otherwise opposed to the bill to basically fight for their own deals. And the other thing is that they're also very concerned about how those allocations affect some of the states that are particularly dependent on coal-fired power plants. They're very concerned that this bill is basically being crafted by two senators, Barbara Boxer of California and John Kerry of Massachusetts, or at least in the case of Barbara Boxer, whose states are not particularly dependent on I should say, on coal-fired power plants. And that, they say, is basically leaving the Midwest very vulnerable to this bill, and they see it as a wealth transfer tax out of those states that are dependent on coal to other states. And here's John Thune of South Dakota, and here's what he had to say.
The split of the allocations that would go out to power distributors would be 50-50 between retail sales and emissions, which penalizes the Midwestern part of the United States significantly. It will be a massive transfer of wealth outside from the Midwest to the East and the West Coast, and so it's going to create huge, I think, regional disparities in how the costs are distributed under this. But it's fair to say that everybody's costs are going up.
Now, also, not surprisingly, the GOP also wants more credits for domestic oil production, natural gas production, and for nuclear. And they realize that while oil and natural gas production won't cut emissions, they do know that nuclear is one of those power sources that is emissions free, and they would like to see the Democrats take another crack at this bill and add some incentives for nuclear. In fact, Senator John McCain, who's probably one of the more moderate senators when it comes to cap and trade, said under no circumstances yesterday that he's going to vote for this unless there's more nuclear incentives. And Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska shared his view. Here's what she had to say yesterday.
when we're talking about the ways that we reduce emissions in this country, where's nuclear? Where's nuclear in this proposal? Apparently there's a placeholder that has been secured that will allow for perhaps some worker training, perhaps some R&D within nuclear. But we've got to be honest, ladies and gentlemen, if we're going to really be reducing emissions in this country in a meaningful way, nuclear has got to be part of the solution.
Hey, Tyler, there's one more point that probably should be made. Republicans are also very concerned about what they see as the price collar. There's a similar price collar in the Kerry-Boxer bill that's in the Waxman-Markey bill with a $28 upper limit for carbon. The concern they have is over what they call the safety valve. What happens if that $28 target gets reached right away once this trading system goes live? Now, under Waxman-Markey and under Kerry-Boxer, there was what's called a safety valve. What happens is if that $28 target gets reached, more allowances from out years will be included. And the Republicans especially are very concerned about this. And I talked with Scott Siegel of Bracewell Giuliani, an analyst, and he said this is very akin to what he sees as a payday loan, is that essentially you're always borrowing from the future to pay for the present and you never get caught up.
All right, Dan Goldstein reporting. Looks like the markup will take place sometime the first week of October in the Environment Committee.